because Allah knows the inner thoughts of our hearts, what our real intention are. So I'm deceiving myself when I pretend that I want to wake up for Fajr when I'm not even making the effort or taking the measures that I know could have helped me to wake up for Fajr on time. The same thing applies for every act of worship and for every act of obedience and act of abstaining from ma'asiyah, from disobedience. If I know I am struggling with something that is an act of disobedience, especially if it's something habitual, and I am not taking any measures to avoid that, and then every time I keep doing the same thing, and not carelessly, not even asking Allah for forgiveness, then this is a very serious problem. And this is, I could, subject myself to be deprived from Allah's mercy, that He is, when He says, "Rahmatullah, inna rahmatallahi qareebun min al-muhsinin, fattaqullaha mastata'tum," means those two ayahs are saying, you do your best of the taqwa, and then the rahmah of Allah, His mercy, will be very close to you if you combine the meanings of the two ayahs together. And so when the same thing with an act, any act of disobedience, when there is something that I know that will make me a certain circumstances that will subject me to fall and slip, and I'm not taking measures to avoid them, to prevent myself from falling into the same trap. Someone who may be weak in front of, say, may Allah protect all of us, na'udhu billahi min dhalik, maybe he's weak with alcohol or something like that. And then if he has a closet full of alcohol, and then he says, yeah, I'm going to avoid it, but then he still has it there in his house, and he keeps, getting weak and then have easy access to it, then this is a person who is reckless, who is negligent. He is not really making a sincere effort to avoid the thing that, can give him access to the sin, versus someone who eliminates every access to this haram, does not allow it to be anywhere near his household. He prevents taking every measure to avoid falling into this haram. Then he slips and falls somehow, despite all this effort. Then Allah and seeks forgiveness every time. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's forgiveness will be close to him, and His mercy will be close to him. And now we have to know that, my brothers, every struggle that we make, every every effort that we make, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, إنه من يتقي ويصبر فإن الله لا يضيع أجر المحسنين. This is in Surah Yusuf. When Yusuf alayhi salam, this is an example. We're not prophets, obviously, like Yusuf alayhi salam. We're average Muslims, but still, Allah used those examples. In the Quran, He says, أولئك الذين هدى الله فبهداه مقتده. Allah says, use those as examples, as benchmarks, as role models, so you can learn from them how to do the taqwa, how to do the proper relationship and worship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So with the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, when we know the story that he was dumped in the well as a child, was picked up, grew up as a slave, was sold as a slave, and grew up by strangers, was raised by strangers, and then he was thrown in jail for several years. In jail, dungeons, not like the jails that we have today. And yet, after all that, he was being patient, and he is not doing haram because he avoided any temptation. Eventually, Allah, what did He do with him? He made him the treasurer of the whole Egypt, and He elevated him. And then when his brothers came to him, and they saw him in this condition, elevated after they've thrown him in the well, they've seen all this, and they asked him to forgive them, ask Allah to ask him to seek forgiveness for them. He said, إنه من يتقي ويصبر فإن الله لا يضيع أجر المحسنين. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those who have taqwa and sabr, Allah will not waste their deeds, their struggle, their efforts to, and their patience. Allah does not waste that. Allah said, that's what He said. And then another ayah, when the king assigned him to become the next to the king, basically, almost at the same level of the king, he said, اجعلني على خزائن الأرض إني حفيظ. Then Allah says in the next ayah after he وكذلك كوّنا ليوسف في الأرض وكذلك مكنا ليوسف في الأرض يتبوأ منها حيث يشاء نصيب برحمتنا من نشاء ولا نضيع أجر المحسنين. Once again, in the same surah, Allah says, I give my mercy to whomever I want. And this is talking about the dunya, because the shaitan will come to you and say, oh, maybe the akhirah, the Jannah is so far off, just the dunya. Do you have to be miserable, living in the dunya with misery, with all, hardship, so that you can, something that's so far off, that where is the Jannah, and this is too far away, it's just in the dunya. You look at the people in this life. This is how the shaitan plays his games on us. Allah says in the Quran, in this ayah, and about Yusuf alayhi salam, when Allah has already elevated him in this dunya, from being, thrown in jail, from being dumped in a well, from being sold as a slave, right? To the point where he got him in this dunya as next to the king, right? And then that's how Allah says, نُصِيبُ بِرَحْمَتِنَا مَنْ نَشَاءُ وَلَا نُضِيعُ أَجْرَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. I will not waste the good struggle of my slave in this dunya. And then he says after, وَلَأَجْرُ أَخِرَتِي خَيْرٌ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَكَانُوا يَتَّقُونَ. And then the wage, the rewards of the akhirah are even much more. This way we can eliminate the deception of the shaitan when he tells you, oh, you don't have to struggle and live in misery in this and hardship in this life, so that you can wait to the Jannah, which is so far off, almost in the very distant future, which is not really true. Even that is not the case, because that akhirah is a lot closer than we think. But even then, even in the dunya, we have to understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward those who are struggling, who are patient, and those who are doing their best, not acting recklessly or negligently, to comply with the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and follow the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And in the Surah Yusuf again, in the beginning of it, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when Yaqub, the father of Yusuf alayhi salam, he says, وَلَا تَيْأَسُوا مِنْ رَوْحِ اللَّهِ. Don't give up from the ease of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of circumstances in this dunya, because they were searching for their brother, for the two brothers, right? In this dunya even. And then we have the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, Surah Al-Hijr, when he said, and all this is that we can dispel the deception of the shaitan to make us feel that you're not going to get anything in this dunya but misery and hardship. No, that's not the case. Allah will reward in this dunya first. Allah says in Surah Al-Hijr, when the angels came in the shape of human beings as guests to Ibrahim alayhi salam, and he was old at that time, and he was hoping for a son. He never got a son. His wife was old also, Sarah. May Allah be pleased with her. And then they told him, وبشروه بغلام قالوا بشرناك بالحق قال أبشرتموني على أن مسني الكبر فبما تبشرون. When they gave him the good news that he will have a son at this old age, he said, are you giving me this news at this old age that I'm going to have a son? Like he was, it's a wonder, it's a surprise. He said, they answered to him, بشرناك بالحق. We're giving you the good news of truth. This is the haqq. فَلَا تَكُمْ مِنَ الْقَانِتِينَ. Don't be among those who despair from Allah's mercy, right? They said that to him. Then what does his answer to them? He said, وَمَنْ يَقْنَةُ مِنْ رَحْمَةِ رَبِّهِ إِلَّا الضَّالُّونَ. And this is a matter of the dunya, not even the akhirah. The only ones who will despair from Allah's mercy, and in matter of getting a son in this dunya, not even the one who despair from Allah's mercy, is only the daloon, like we say, wala dalleen, basically those who are astray, those who are misguided, right? And those are the ones who will only despair from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is a perfect example of how Allah instructs us, how our Islam was supposed to be optimistic about this dunya and the akhirah. Not just the akhirah, of course, very hopeful of Jannah and the akhirah, but to be optimistic of the dunya. Allah says in the Hadith Qudsi, أَنَا عِنْدَ ظَنِّ عَبْدِي بِي فَلْيَظُنْ بِي مَا يَشَاءُ. I will meet my slave's expectations, so he can expect of me whatever he wants. And this is how our approach and our hope in Allah's mercy in this dunya before the akhirah are. Because the shaitan is one of the many objectives of the shaitan is to give us sadness, anxiety, so that we can distance us from the zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the trusting of Allah, from the tawakkul of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is the opposite of the tawakkul? is fear and anxiety of what is going to happen. This is going to happen to me. I'm going to get poor. I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to lose my kids. My kids are going to be bad, and this is happening. And then I'm going to lose and then I'm going to be sick, and all kind of fears. And poverty. الشيطان يعدكم الفقر. Even promise you will be poor if you give away in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you donate, if you give sadaqah. الشيطان يعدكم الفقر. Allah says in the Quran, He promised you poverty. Allah and verses in contrast, Allah يعدكم مغفرة منه وفضلا. Allah gives you, He promises you a forgiveness from Him and His bounties. This is a contrast between the two. And the same thing, إنما النجوى من الشيطان ليحزن الذين آمنوا. And Shaitan is the one who would like to bring sadness in the hearts of the believers. And that's how he does it, by making you despair from Allah's mercy and despair from and be always pessimistic, and that's how you get distracted and you get pulled down with all those negative feelings. When you don't feel you don't feel the energy even to get up and do the acts of worship, come to the masjid, wake up for Fajr on time, do Salat on time, fast, do all those, read the Quran, because always pulling you down with negative energy from the shaitan. What Allah says, always be optimistic, always expect the best from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In this dunya before the akhirah. Don't ever despair from His mercy. In this dunya before the akhirah. Don't ever despair from His ease of circumstances. He said the one who despair from Allah's mercy or His ease of circumstances is the sign of kufr. Imagine that, very serious. لا تيأسوا من روح الله إنه لا ييأس من روح الله إلا القوم الكافرون. كافرون, the ones who despair and give up completely from the ease of circumstances if you're going through a hardship. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He tests us with hardship, is out of His mercy. There's something good always coming out of it. This is how we expect the best. This is part of the package, is that when I'm going through the hardship, not only I expect the best from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I know this hardship that is a part of a test that is good for me, is destined, the outcome will always good for me. بيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدير. بيده الخير means only the best comes from Him. The best for me. It's Allah's power. The incredible Allah's power that He organizes destiny in a way that everybody can be effective differently. And if the way you perceive it and you take it in your heart with faith, it will be so much good for you, will be better for you in your heart, and you can get to understand how, versus someone who objects and wails and does not like Allah's destiny and does not see Allah's hikmah, His wisdom in what is destined, is the one who will always be suffering, always objecting, always sad, always depressed, and always not trusting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now this is not just to underscore that the depression this is not that I'm saying people get depressed, of course, as a medical condition. This is a different story. That does not mean that everyone who has suffering from depression does not have faith. Don't get me wrong, please, because that's not what it meant. I'm talking about but the ones who have a medical condition as a depression, they have to seek obviously therapy and medical attention for that. You cannot accuse someone who is suffering from medical depression as having poor, weak faith. That's not the case. That's not what I mean. But I'm saying in general, when we have our everyday life, is a whole different story. This is what is, inshallah, I'm referring to. So the bottom line is that optimism is something that Allah wants us to be as a good believer who has tawakkul, trust in Allah's divine wisdom, trusting in Allah's mercy, and then it will come close to us, and then not to act, inshallah, recklessly or negligently, and do our best, inshallah, so that we can feel Allah's mercy close to us. سبحانك اللهم بحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فيا فوز المستغفرين. استغفر الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله النبي الكريم. الحمد لله كما ينبغي لجلال وجهه ولعظيم سلطانه، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. أما بعد، فيا عباد الله اتقوا الله تعالى جميعا ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. اتقوا الله تعالى ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون، واعتصموا بحبل الله جميعا ولا تفرقوا، واذكروا نعمة الله عليكم، فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله، وخير الهدي هدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم، واحذروا البدع والمحدثات، فإن شر الأمور محدثاتها، وكل بدعة ضلالة، وكل ضلالة في النار. اعلموا أن الله سبحانه وتعالى أمركم بأمر بدأ فيه بنفسه، فقال سبحانه وتعالى: إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على عبدك ورسولك سيدنا محمد البشير النذير والسراج المنير، وارض اللهم عن الأربعة الخلفاء الراشدين أبي بكر وعمر وعثمان وعلي، وعن بقية الصحابة وعن التابعين وتابعي التابعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين، وعنا معهم بعفوك وكرمك وجودك وإحسانك يا أرحم الراحمين. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا، وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا وأخطأنا، ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا، ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به، واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا، أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. عباد الله رحمكم الله، إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. واذكروا الله يذكركم واشكروا عن نعمه يزدكم، ولذكر الله أكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون، وأقم الصلاة.